What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPaul11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. TOJ Talks, all 32. Happy Thursday to everybody. Hope everyone had a good July 4th weekend. Quick episode here. Going to be discussing a little bit of the Jets rankings. PFF came out with their positional group rankings based on a year ago and going into 2025. So we're going to hit on the offensive line and secondary. Also going to hit on a couple Discord questions as well. So, we'll hop right into it. Again, there'll be an episode following on Saturday as well. And then two next week. We'll start to get into some more camp previews and different things like that. PSA, buy your live show tickets. Can't say it enough. Special guests, great prizes. It's going to be a great time. It's down at Grand Central. So make sure you guys, click on the link below and make sure you guys get those live show tickets. No time to waste there. So hopping right into it. Jets offensive line, PFF came out with it, I believe, on Tuesday. Jets offensive line ranked 9th going into the 2025 season. Obviously you post about it and you see kind of the different discourse and where fans are at with, what the ranking is. And, people are happy. People think it's overzealous. Some people think it's too low. Kind of want to give my opinion on it and just kind of talk a little bit through it there. So, Jets come in at 9. I think that was fair. I think that you could probably rank them anywhere between 8 and 13 and would have felt pretty good about it. I think, the interior of that offensive line is pretty established at this point. I've talked a bunch about it. I don't see the Joe Tippmann versus Josh Myers competition. Maybe that's something for, Josh Myers' top tier depth. Chuks Okorafor and Josh Myers are good backups, good swing tackles, good swing guard centers there. And hey, if AVT goes down for a couple of weeks, we could kick Tippmann out and go from there. Or hey, Tippmann's struggling there in camp, we can get Myers some reps there. Like, sure. But again, I think that interior is pretty well established. John Simpson's, again, a guy who, 4th-round pick, obviously a really tumultuous start to the beginning of his career, but the last 2 years has been a really solid player. I think he's one of the better free agent signings a year ago, and no reason he should get worse playing next to better players in 2025. So Simpson, I would say an average to above average, 27, 28-year-old guard. He's a guy who, I know Joe and Connor mentioned on on Tuesday's episode, I believe. But yeah, I think he's a guy who, you potentially could look at signing and extending in season. Maybe it's just attacking on a year. Maybe it's tacking on 2 years for, age 29, age 30 season, something of that nature. Definitely something the Jets could explore. Again, his wife, has a residency, for the next 3 years here in the medical field. So again, it's something that, hey, he seems to love being here. He's a vocal leader on this team. He's a guy in his prime, not going to cost you what, an AVT theoretically is going to cost you. So, hey, do you tack on 2 years, $20 million or something like that, the first year guaranteed and go from there? Sure. That's something the Jets could explore in season if Simpson continues to play well. I think you move over to center. We've talked about Tippmann probably far too much, frankly. He was ranked the 8th best center by Pro Football Focus a year ago. Not saying you should just go based off PFF rankings, but that's obviously the exercise we're doing here. So, Tippmann, again, a guy maybe the 8th to 13th or 14th best center, depending on maybe you're a little higher on him, maybe you're a little lower on him. He's a guy going into year 3, better offensive line coach, better supporting cast, a quarterback who probably is going to be able to help, bring out the best in maybe some run game stuff he hasn't been able to do in the past, some pulling, some different things, some screen game stuff that the Jets have not been, do quite as much maybe in the last couple of years based on quarterback stuff. Not that Fields throws a better screen than Aaron Rodgers, but it's just a matter of the offense, motion, different things, getting out on the move, a mobile quarterback, maybe some more boots, some more nakeds, things like that. And again, some read option stuff. So, I expect Tippmann to have a better year. I thought he was good last year. I thought he got better from year 1 to year 2. Yes, he can play guard. He's a bigger guard. He's athletic. But he's also a much more than fine center. So, those two kind of positions solidified. I'd say Tippmann's probably the 15th best guard, left guard, and Tippmann's the 8th to 10th best center. You're already off to a good start. Again, that's average to above league average at those two spots. Right guard, AVT, I think has the potential to be a top 5 right guard in the league. He's probably, again, more in the 8 to 14 range. But again, if the core of your interior offensive line is the 10th best interior offensive line, but those guys play week over week together, guys have familiarity with each other, there's chemistry there, they're all guys that are in their prime or actually entering their prime. So, that's one reason to be very optimistic about the Jets offensive line. I think I can't hammer this point home enough. AVT has not had a full offseason since he was a rookie. And when you're a rookie, that's not really a full offseason. You're doing combine, senior bowl, pre-draft visits, your own pro day, the just basically clusterfuck that is the NFL draft process, which is great for people like me and Connor and all these different people that go to the combine and Senior Bowl and all that stuff. And it's great to get all this, insight into these guys, and these teams have, months to kind of make their decisions. But, it takes a toll on these guys, and then they go right into rookie mini camp and moving their families and doing these different things, and then right into OTAs. And, you get a couple weeks break, but you're trying to train for your first training camp. And AVT obviously played at a really high level as a rookie, and then, gets hurt in year 2, and then year 3, and then year 4, had the sprained ankle, but tried to play through it as much as he could. And now he's going to go into a year where had the full off season, able to spend time with wife, kids, the whole 9 yards, able to, kind of come back to where he's living, new coaching staff. But again, that's an upgrade, right? Even just on the face of it, a new offensive line coach is a good thing based on what the Jets have been dealing with. So I don't look at anything here as a negative. And again, now you have, depth, whether it's, again, a guy like Josh Myers who can play center or guard, and you can kick people around, and the Jets have some flexibility on the on the interior there. And wouldn't be shocked if, again, waiver wire time, end of camp, the Jets even add another guy there just to, provide depth. Move to the tackle spots. It's hard to evaluate where Olu and Membu fit in terms of, hey, they're the top this in the league, or they're top this. I think it's fair to ask, can Olu be a top 12 left tackle? I don't think that's asking way too much. I think that, Connor and Joe mentioned, hey, could be an all-pro in 2025. Look at the AFC and all these different things. I'm just talking, can he be above league average? Because if he's above league average, which is where he played at, in my opinion, when he was a starter as a rookie, whether it's right guard, right tackle, left tackle, he was the best at left tackle. The Jets offense was better with him at left tackle. And it's no disrespect to Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith's body just broke, but that's a first team. That's a first ballot Hall of Famer right there. And again, being able to learn under him, and even if it's just 17 games, like being around Tyron Smith, knowing how to be a pro last year, when a guy who we had no questions about, he knew he was going to be able to step in. He looked good in camp last year. I thought he looked good in the preseason. Thought he looked good in the games. Like, I can't emphasize enough. Like, there's nothing to be concerned with, in my opinion, with Olu. Actually, he was a better run blocker than was given credit for coming out. Obviously, he was a guy who was a pro-ready pass blocker, and a guy who was going to take some time, was a good run blocker, but not like a dominant the way Membu was in college. So can he be, again, an average NFL run blocker and an elite pass protector? Does that sound familiar? We comped him to D'Brickashaw Ferguson. Everyone did for months and years and whatever, and that's kind of a lot of the way he looked as a rookie. So, again, we're talking top 15 left guard, top 12 left tackle. And these are just as conservative, frankly. Like, I think Olu could play better than that. I think Simpson could be maybe the 10th best left guard. Tittman's the 8th best center. It's AVT, the 8th best right guard. Every single person on that line, well, it's a lot of first-round picks, is playing like an average to above average, if not even, a really good offensive lineman. You're in a really good spot as an O-line. Look at the Bills' offensive line over the last 4, 5, 6 years. Yes, Deion Dawkins is very good. And can AVT be their Deion Dawkins in terms of like an all-pro level player, or Tittman, or obviously Olu and Membu? But everybody else, like Spencer Brown's not good. He's an average right tackle, I'd argue, based on players I asked around the league. He's worse than average, but gets the job done. He plays at an average clip. The rest of that, Mitch Morse and the rest of these guys, Pro Bowl level potentially, but again, that's more of a group thing. And he's the bigger name. So, like, those guys play 17 games a year. They're healthy. They have good chemistry. They're able to be on the field, and the scheme benefits them. And we never worry about their offensive line. It's not because they have 5 stars. The Ravens, the same thing, right? You have 1 or 2 guys, the Niners forever, 1 or 2 guys, good scheme, 1 or 2 really talented guys, and the rest just playing at an NFL average level. That's all you're asking for. In the past, it's Mekhi Becton leading the league in false starts and sacks. Lincoln Tomlinson allowing the most pressures. This guy doing this. Morgan Moses is in, he's out. Again, great professional and the whole thing, but like wasn't playing a ton and then played at an average clip at best last year. And, again, I don't think the Jets, in hindsight, are wrong for letting him walk for what he ended up getting from New England, 3 for 24. And again, I just, not that it's unreasonable, but I think the Jets would have taken him back to like 1 for 5. That was never going to happen. So, they're in a good spot. And then you kick over to Membu. Can Membu be a top 16 right tackle? Just average. Not asking him to play like in an elite clip. Can he show you flashes? Can he be a dominant run blocker? Can the Jets run behind AVT and Membu, pulling Tittman, getting out some read options, some 2-back stuff, and maybe some help from Ruckert, or if he's going to play well in that kind of fullback, semi tight end role? Or can it be Mason Taylor be a good enough blocker where hey, they can go kind of overload stuff. They've seen the Jets do this in the past where they've been successful with Breece Hall, of some overload, kind of getting Breece out in space, and hey, the tight end tight end seals, you get a puller or two, and you clear some space, and you're off to the races. Can they bring that stuff back? Can they run some play action and some kind of quarterback keep stuff off of that where they do pull people and, they pull Tippmann the other way, but, fake a lot of run action to the right and come back to the left side of the field. So a lot there. I think the 9th was a fair grade. It's a little bit of projection, sure, because again, you're projecting a fully healthy season, but that's with everybody, and you're projecting Olu and Membu. But frankly, I kind of think I went conservative there. Can they be average to above average? Can Olu be a top 8 left tackle? And now you've got 3 guys at top 8 spots at their position and 2 guys at league average. It's gonna be a really fucking good offensive line. Like that. That's just the reality of it, right? So I think the quarterback mobility is going to help. I think that's hurt them in the past. I think play calling is going to help. I think that's hurt them in the past. I think offensive line coach is going to help. That's hurt them in the past. So I thought 9th was fair. Maybe it's a tick or two high based on projections, but I actually think, if you told me the Jets finished 6th or 7th at the end of the year, I wouldn't be shocked. Moving on to the secondary. I felt like I've been higher on the Jets secondary than most. I tweeted out earlier in the offseason. I was like, hey, man, this group might be better than the last couple of years by season's end, just because I think it's a more total group. Again, I said this about the offensive line, like AVT at his peak, 24 months ago before pre-Achilles, pre-tricep. Yeah, maybe he was the 3rd best right guard in the AFC, but everybody else around him kind of sucked, right? So that doesn't really help. It's a team sport, and a lot of these groups kind of work in tandem with each other. The Jets safety room on paper, I think, is better than it's been in quite some time. Now, a lot of that's projection. Similar to the offensive line. Again, the Jets coming at 11 here. I think that's probably fair based on the way Stevens and Cisco played a year ago, and then some projections for some rookies and guys coming back from injury. Sauce is a top 2 or 3 corner in the league. I'd probably still have him at 2 or 1. I think him and Surtain have every argument to be 1 themselves. I think anyone putting anybody else, probably some haterade in your drink a little bit. But again, there's some other guys that have very, very much can have that clean to that spot. Regardless, Sauce is an elite corner. Can travel, can play in any different type of coverage. That already gets you vaulted into like the top 15. Michael Carter, I think, when healthy in his first couple of years in the NFL, was a top 5 slot corner in the league. I think he's better than that, but again, didn't have the turnovers, maybe the recognition to get, some of those kind of accolades like Pro Bowls and All Pros. He was the highest paid slot corner, for a while. In the NFL, anything more than a week is a while. So I think, again, he was extremely hurt last year. I think he tried to play through it. His communication and ability to kind of command that defense in that room is going to be huge for guys like Sauce and some of the safeties and the young guys. And also guys like Sherwood and Quincy, getting them in the right position, getting them aligned. I would argue the highest football IQ, on that, maybe on the team, let alone, on the defense. Having him back healthy is huge. Sauce having a better year, again, was fine last year. He was a good player. Wasn't Sauce of the first 2 years. And I think, talked about it a million times, put on a bunch of muscle, has taken things seriously, hopefully, and, should be extended here, this summer. I think there's nothing to worry about there. And then you go to the other corner. The Jets have kind of put themselves in, I think, a good spot here. You were never going to pay DJ Reed once you paid Michael Carter, let alone you were never going to pay him, what he was looking for coming off a down year, in my opinion, last year. Brandon Stevens is coming off a down year as well. So there's going to be question marks there. The good news is, for once, I feel like there's good depth at that position, whether it's going to Azareye'h Thomas earlier than later. Again, a guy who's a rookie, but a ready-made rookie to play right away. I've talked a million times about Azareye'h. I'm not going to continue to go on there. Is it Quantez Stiggers in year 2, who showed some flashes in the preseason, had a really nice camp? Is it JBC, a guy who, again, had a really, really strong camp last year, and then we kind of just didn't see the rest of the season because of, depth and things like that? Is it somebody else we're not mentioning at the moment? And then again, you go to safety. Cisco coming off a down year, I still think he's a better player than Adams. He's definitely, I think, a better player than Whitehead, who was coming off multiple. Whitehead was fine here. Just too many, boomer bust plays when he's not. You wanted him to be like a very stable tackler. Didn't need to be a turnover machine. Just need to, do the right thing. And I feel like too many busted coverages, things like that when he was here. And then again, Malachi Moore. Can Malachi Moore come in and start right away? A guy who came in and started right away at Alabama, was able to kind of make his imprint and do a really nice job there. So, I just think the room as a whole. Can Tony Adams rebound this year? Can there be somebody else we're not talking about? Is it an Isaiah Oliver, somebody like that? I think 11's fair. It's my quote unquote bold prediction going into one of the bold predictions going into the year is that group finishes, as a top 5 or top 6. 5 to 7, I guess, within the league. I think that group's going to be better on paper. I think there's going to be multiple Pro Bowlers or All Pros in that secondary. I think Cisco at least plays a lot more like 2022 and 23 Andre Cisco, which means, hey, that safety room is better than it was a year ago. And the corner room can Thomas, Stevens, Stiggers, JBC, can the combination of all those guys be 80% of DJ Reed, 90% of DJ Reed? Can Michael Carter be Michael Carter and Sauce be Sauce? Because then you're in a good spot. I want to talk on those two position groups. Last couple things here, real quick. I did my, quarterback rankings, with my GRD on all 32, and, had Fields at 27. And, I've seen a lot of rankings, whether, Fields kind of falling between 25 and 32. I've said this a million times, and I'll continue to say this. Can Justin Fields just play to like the 20th or 21st level? Can he be the 20th best quarterback in the NFL next year? Because if he does that, it means he's playing obviously above expectation. The Jets defense should be much better. They should be better coached. The offensive line should be much better. All these different things. Again, not everything's going to improve. Not everything's going to go perfect. But if Fields can be the 20th best quarterback in the NFL, you're in a much better spot than if he's the 29th best or 30th best or gets benched. So kind of obvious one there. Last thing, I was on Jake Asman's show, and I talked about this, and kind of shamelessly, this will probably be the social clip for this episode. Got a lot of questions. Oh, why haven't they added a D-line? Why haven't they added a receiver? Why is Clemens still on the team? Why is Lazard still on the team? You get all those different questions. I would phrase it as this. I think this is a new staff. They have all these guys in the spring. They had a small chance to evaluate, right? But the spring's a little bit of, you're not in pads. They're practices, but they're very different. I think this staff, and again, you can disagree or agree with this. It doesn't really matter. I'm just telling you what I believe is true. They want to evaluate these guys in pads, in a camp practice, in camp practices, in scrimmages, and maybe even joint practice or so before they start kind of overreaching and saying, oh, we need to add 3 defensive tackles, or we need to add 3 receivers. I'm not telling you that I don't think they should have added another receiver. And they, having Lazard here and whatever you think of him, hey, maybe not everyone's cup of tea. I get it. Why is Michael Clemens on the roster? Well, I think they probably view it as any other team would probably pay him $3.5, $4, $5 million as well. And hey, in a reserve role as the number 4 edge rusher and special teamer, we feel like he can play a role here because that's what he did in 2022. I'm not saying I agree, but I think that's a fair take. And again, I just think they're going to get into camp and say, hey, maybe Coward and Nnamdi and these guys are not at defensive tackle. We got to go out and find one. Again, you don't have to agree. I just think they're probably going to do a lot of self-evaluation. They're going to try to self-scout themselves through the first week, 2 weeks of camp, and then go out and address maybe, hey, we need to go pick up a receiver. We need to go pick up a back. We need to go pick up a tight end, whatever it may be, defensive tackle, safety, who knows? I just think there's going to be a lot more self-evaluation, self-scouting going on that they've been doing from the time they were hired, going off tape last year, in-game tape, practice tape, whatever it may be, meeting with these guys, getting in the building, seeing how they work during the spring. And then once the pads come on, if it doesn't match up with what their evaluation was, I think they'll move on quickly. I don't think there's a staff that's going to grandfather guys in and just give them spots. I also think there's guys that might come in and say, hey, like, new staff, I don't know, maybe Jeremy Ruckert or Michael Clemens or one of these guys from that 2021 class or 2022 class, I apologize, or Tony Adams or any of these guys that we kind of have question marks about their roster spots. Maybe they come in and look like the guys they were supposed to be and rejuvenate under a new staff. They look good in pads. They're actually practicing well. There's signs of promise. Gibson, Corley, whoever it may be. Or those guys all stink and they'll be moved on and they'll be cut and they'll bring in other guys. So the Jets have cap space and flexibility to do so. They have a ton of picks if they need to move things. If things are going well at the deadline, maybe they are aggressive and they try to buy guys with team control. Things are going terrible for them and they're 2-6. Maybe it is a Quincy Williams. Maybe it is, other guys that are moved because, hey, they're not going to be here long term and we're going to get an asset back. Like, those are all future conversations. I just think that I'd like to give the patience and kind of benefit of the doubt to this new regime. Hey, with the extensions, with how they handle some of these different things, I would be curious if anything is affected by Woody buying, a lot of Crystal Palace. That'd be an interesting one to kind of think about. But other than that, extensions get done. Everyone stay out of the noise until July 22nd. And then over the next 12 days, then it's go time. And then you start evaluating, with pads on, what Clemens, Ruckert, Stone Smart, Gibson, Corley, Adams, all the names we've talked about a million times, what they look like. And we kind of go from there. But live show tickets back on Saturday. Appreciate everyone for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.